Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome back to the Brick City Blockade here on our journey to episode 9 recap. That's right, we are closing in, folks. It's amazing that this journey is about to come to a halting end
Yep.
with Rise of Skywalker. But today we are discussing and taking a look back at the last film we saw before this, which was Solo, I guess, but also The Last Jedi. And unfortunately, Sean couldn't be on this recap episode. The dude is trying to recover up here in New England, of course, from what we call the New England cold, which is just a
Yeah.
standard cold. And I just had a bunch of BS right there just to come up with something cool. But I've got Andrew Gerrish in front of me on
Yep.
this episode. Andrew, how's it going, my friend?
It's going pretty good. Not as cold as it has been.
I know.
Uh, it's weird. It
It's
doesn't
weird.
feel like Christmas, but
Doesn't-
I'll take it. I
Oh,
kind of prefer 'em a little bit more warm weather.
I know.
Not so much like the summer, but more
Right.
fallish kind of weather.
Yeah, I know, and we're in a very weird spot for December here in New England. For all those who are listening across the world and across the country, maybe you've seen it on the weather forecast, but we're unseasonably warm here. It's like Hoth decided to melt a little bit
Yeah.
here in New England, so we're taking advantage of it. But Andrew, let me start off with this. We're talking about The Last Jedi on this recap, and I want you to give me your top four Last Jedi moments, things that you recollect about it, things that you really enjoyed about The Last Jedi itself that really stand out to you.
Um. Personally, my top four. Starting with four, like our format has been.
Mhm.
Battle of the Crate. I really. It's similar to Battle of Hoth in a
Mhm.
way, but it is different to where it's like this is fresh, this is new,
Right.
and again, like Empire Strikes Back, you felt the power of the First Order,
It's true.
which before that we never really did. Besides, again, Starkiller Base,
Good.
and you saw the strength of the First Order and their technology that they have, like the battering ram that's tech from the Death Star and everything like that, and the desperation of the Resistance, similar to the Rebels.
Yeah.
Well, at this point, they're Rebels again, technically, but
Yeah, Huck said it. Huck said it in The Last Jedi.
yeah. Three would be Luke's confrontation with Kylo. I
Mm,
really I really like it. It shows the legend that Luke Skywalker was and technically still is. Um, just posing Luke and all the resistance fighters
yeah.
seeing Luke, the legend, walk out to face down Kylo Ren. And it's essentially just an uncle punking his nephew one last time before he goes away.
It's so true. So
Uh,
true.
yeah, this is the only Star Wars movie where we don't get a traditional lightsaber duel,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it was still cool to see Luke being the legend that we heard about in books and comic books and
Right.
stuff like that. Two, the throne room stuff with Snoke,
Yeah.
Kylo, and
Yeah, that
Ren.
was great.
The throne room could have looked a little bit better. It just looked like an unfinished set. Um,
I noticed
uh,
that.
but I did like it. It did show Snoke's power, but
Hmm.
we'll get into some stuff, my theories on that when we get to Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
Uh, but Andy Serkis, again, I love his motion capture
Mm.
um, stuff. I am happy that he was in the sequel trilogy as Snoke. Anything Andy Serkis is in gets a higher rating for me. Like
Totally.
the remake of Planet of the Apes, I wasn't the biggest Planet of the Apes fan, but the remakes,
Right.
because of Andy Serkis' technology with the motion capture, it's one of the best trilogies. And the technology evolved through each film, and you saw more of Andy Serkis' face in King Caesar. Just
Right.
like Snoke, you see a lot of Andy Serkis's features in Snoke. Um, Number one, everything with Luke.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's saying that this is not the Luke Skywalker they remember or anything like that. This is Luke Skywalker 30 years after Return of the Jedi. He is going to be a different person. I I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago. Robin's definitely not the same person he was 10
Definitely
years ago.
not.
Um, and that's the thing. It shows that the character grew in that 30-year time gap.
Yep.
And yeah, there could be more stuff telling the story of Luke finding the Emperor's observatories,
Yeah.
looking for relics, trying to see if anything else is out there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and it, for those saying that it's out of Luke's character to try and kill Ben, Luke looked into Ben's mind and saw all these bad things.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to have to relive Darth Vader and the Empire and everything like that. Yeah, inadvertently he created Kylo Ren, but it's something out of instinct where it's like, okay, I have this chance to stop evil right here, right now,
Yeah.
or let it grow and get stronger. And that's the most human thing is it's like I can do this now,
Yep. Yep.
right here, right now, and then you realize it's not the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And those the main issue a lot of people have is that I've noticed with Luke, besides him being grumpy, which it's he's on an island, he's trying to be alone. I can get it.
Isn't
I'll
Mark
get.
Hamill fairly grumpy to begin with anyway?
Well, it depends on the topic.
That
Uh,
that's what I'm that's what, yeah. I mean,
um, and then those saying him throwing the lightsabers out of character. Go back and watch Return of the Jedi. He throws down his lightsaber
yeah.
there. Um, and the lessons that he gives to Rey. Granted, we never got the third lesson, which it was a deleted scene, but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the lessons that we got and the little bit of we saw of Luke being curious of training Rey when she was like practicing with the lightsaber and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think The Last Jedi encompasses many different events, and it does a fantastic job of giving us a very different aspect of the Star Wars universe, especially different filming style. I mean, Ryan
Mhm.
Johnson is somebody who never really worked on any big budget films to begin with. Always had his
Yeah.
own independent projects, always had his own film crew, and always wrote a story that was, to be honest with you, very different than what the rest of the film industry was doing in whatever slated year the film came out. And for him to walk into The Last Jedi in my top four, starts with number four, and it starts with, in particular, when Rey confronts Luke on Octu, and we pick up right where we left off,
Mhm.
and Luke throws the saber. I think that cinematically, that is the biggest. It's the biggest letdown, but a spark of hope at the same time.
Mhm.
It was interesting the dynamic between it because they left it on a certain note with the Force Awakens. You know that JJ and Ryan had sat down, and Ryan had said at one point, like, what if Luke threw his lightsaber when he got it? Like, I'm done with this. I want nothing to do with this.
Mhm.
And I think that, to be honest with you, when you watch the last bit of the film and you finally watch the credit scene, JJ was there. JJ knew
Mhm.
exactly what Ryan was working on because even though Colin Trevorrow was slated to direct episode 9, deep down inside, Kathleen Kennedy and Bob Iger said, we're not liking where this is going. JJ is
Mhm.
going to be the next guy. Ryan, talk with JJ, see what you can do with some of these characters to help perpetuate into how JJ wants to finish this thing. And I think that scene alone is where we see Ryan exploring his style and
Mhm.
also cutting it back to what JJ wanted from the character of Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what Mark Hamill felt remember when he first came out, he was like, this has been the hardest role for me to play. This has been the hardest incarnation of Luke for me to really adapt to
Hmm.
because we were doing so many different things with him. And sorry to say it, I really have to act in this
Hmm.
role even more than I've done in the past. I have to show raw emotion even more in this. And that was the balance between Rian Johnson and J.J. Abrams, which I think a lot of fans still have a hard time with. But like you said earlier, Andrew, until you know what it's like to sit behind a camera, and we haven't done it ourselves, but we have a lot of people who have. Until you have sit down behind a camera and have had the pressure on you to fulfill a script and to fulfill a story, do you know what it's like to actually have to push that forward?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of fans, that was why it was number 4 for me, because a lot of fans were taken away by it. And there's just so much more to that scene than what we even perceive at times. So
Yeah.
it's a very interesting scene and is one that I continually reflect upon. My number 3 is when we meet Admiral Holdo for the first time, and we see the dynamic between Holdo and Poe Dameron in particular. And Holdo, if you read a lot of the Leia stuff, Princess of Alderaan, any of the canon stuff, you know that Holdo's very close to Leia.
Hmm.
Her relationship with Leia goes deep. In many ways, Leia was a mentor to her. And if Holdo had existed in the time of the original trilogy, I think she would have been the right hand to Mon Mothma even more because
Hmm.
she carries that kind of charisma and character. And I think Poe misjudged that because he's so used to the leadership of Leia and her style that Holdo comes in very quiet, very relaxed, but is also speaking to Leia and knows probably exactly how Poe acts. And I just love the dynamic between the two. And then when Poe tries to completely change the show, Leia comes back into the picture and says, this is why Holdo took over and not you, because you're not ready yet." And she's already been through a lot herself. So I think that character, Laura Dern's character, including the maneuver, I think it was genius. I wish we had more of Admiral Holdo. I want to know more about her.
Hmm.
And I think that she's one of those characters that you bring in somebody like Laura Dern, who has a lot of film experience. And I think with Rian Johnson, he had her for a certain amount of time, but I feel like we could have had more. So that's why it's number 3 for me, because I would have loved to have seen more of her character development even earlier on. Maybe in Force
Yeah.
Awakens, even being introduced to her would have
Hmm.
been really cool as well. So that's my number 3. Number 2 for me is, of course, the one scene that always hits me the hardest, which is the throne room scene, which I believe was your number 2 as well.
Hmm.
And it's so cool because we were all waiting for that big moment that was going to happen. Whether it was going to be Rey, whether it was going to be Kylo, whether it was going to be Snoke himself, just changing the story going forward in some sort of way possible. And for it to be by the hands of Ben Solo in that moment, and I love it when if you watch on YouTube, it's Daisy Ridley kind of breaking down the scene
Yeah.
as it's going. And she talks about specifically, she was like, if it's your first time watching it, you're surprised by it. But the more you watch The Last Jedi, you're like, you start to see like, oh wait, this was totally gonna happen. This was just
Yeah.
it was foreseen way ahead of time. And we're gonna get into it with the Rise of Skywalker, but there's a lot of things you look at that scene in particular, and you're like, ooh, I think Snoke even knew. I think Snoke
Hmm.
even knew that something was going to turn tides here. So I just love the dynamics, the choreography, the just the way everything went. And like Daisy Ridley said, most of this was all in one take. If there had to be
Hmm.
multiple takes, they had to wait multiple days in between so the set people could come in and fix up the entire thing.
Yeah.
The amount of money that just went into that scene alone for
Hmm.
the entire film budget is quite stunning and is quite amazing. So alone in that takes up my number 2. And of course, my number 1 scene in this entire film is when Luke comes in and Leia's sitting there and he gives her the dice. And I think that's the one scene for me where, um, and I don't know if you felt this, Andrew, but I sat there and I knew that Luke was going to do something, that
Hmm.
he was going to risk himself for the good of what
Yeah.
was whatever left. But it was also my moment where I said, Carrie Fisher's gone now.
Mhm.
This is also the moment where Leia realizes my time is coming too. My time is up. And that's the whole dynamic between those two characters in that scene. And the music, the tone, him looking at C3PO and winking. I mean,
Yeah,
it was nostalgic, but it was simple, and it felt like an independent film in that moment. It did
it
not
really
feel
did.
necessarily like Star Wars. It was like, let's put Luke and Leia in the spotlight on the stage with 1,000 people in the theater,
Mhm.
and let them have their Shakespearean moment. And that's what it was in that film. And I still, to this day, it's the one part that I really get emotional with. And
Same with
it always will be.
same with me. I don't know if I mentioned it in Return of the Jedi, but the Luke and Leia theme is one of my favorite Star Wars
Yeah.
themes, and it even played a little bit in um, Rise of Skywalker for the soundtrack. But it was more powerful in Last Jedi because it's the Not only is it the last time Hamill and Carrie Fisher had a scene together, but it's the last time Leia is going to see her brother.
Yeah.
For and it's the first time she's seeing him in who knows how many years,
Yeah.
because there's no real time frame on when Kylo turned to the dark side.
Hmm.
Um,
It really isn't.
I'd say it's more recent that he turned,
It seems
um,
like it. Yeah.
because he didn't seem too much older when he was a Padawan when Luke
No.
made his choice.
And I haven't really read the comic in terms of the Kylo and Luke stuff, so I haven't seen too much yet in terms of that. Maybe it'll answer that. Who knows?
Yeah, um, but it's it's very bittersweet
It is.
because I would have liked to see where the character would have gone if Carrie didn't pass away.
Yeah.
But I am happy with what we got in Last Jedi and then what we got in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
And um yeah, it's still an emotional scene. Not too much emotion with what rewatching it.
Yeah.
I think rewatching specific parts of Rise of Skywalker is going to be more emotional for me going
Yeah.
forward with this trilogy anyway.
Yeah, it seems like it. Just the dynamics between going from Force Awakens to a film that feels very different than the rest of the Star Wars universe that we've become accustomed to between the prequels and the sequel trilogy and of course the original trilogy. It stands out as its own little thing. And I think that's good. I think that it was about time that we had somebody else come in and just give it a shot. Like I know you and I have always talked about that, bringing different people into the Star Wars universe to explore their stories, and I think Jon Favreau with The Mandalorian has been a great example of bringing
Mm-hmm.
in different directors to tell different stories. It's a format that Dave Filoni absolutely loves. It's a format that Lucasfilm has always liked to begin with,
Yeah,
and I think The Last Jedi was that great testing ground for is could this work? Could this be something that the fans could get behind? And no matter what anybody says, whether it works for you, whether it doesn't, what The Last Jedi does do is it gives us that middle film in a sequel trilogy, and it also gives us a middle film where we really have to take a step back and
mm-hmm.
you have to use your brain. You have to use your mind. There's a lot of different aspects of Star Wars where a lot of the answers are right there answers. You look at it, it's like, okay, that's what happened. I get that. Last Jedi does something very different. It makes you think, and it makes you really have to like dig deep in. Like if you're watching an opera in a foreign language, you can't rely on the language that's being spoken. You have to look at the emotions on people's faces. You have to watch their body language. That's
Mm-hmm.
what The Last Jedi does. I'm going to say it. The Last Jedi is an opera in the Star Wars universe.
I can agree
And
with
and
that.
and I think it has to be treated as so. It's an art form, and it's different for a lot of people, and that's why it brings out so much negativity at times in the discussion room because it is so different. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the only other thing, Andrew, of course, we can't really do make it or break it with this because we already saw the Rise of Skywalker, so we
Yeah.
can't even do that. But I do have another quick little segment to add on to this part here. Andrew, let me ask you, Porg or Porg? Porg or no Porg?
No pork. I
Why?
didn't like.
Why? Here
They
comes the great
are.
debate.
I wasn't a fan of them to begin with, even
Okay.
seeing it when it first released. Um, they didn't have any need to be there
Ooh.
besides to be cute and be there
Mmm.
for kids and to sell more toys.
Mmm. See it now. I'm going to say Porg on this because I think the one thing that the Porgs do in particular with the Last Jedi
Nothing.
is just stop it. Um, now you're definitely not knowing what you're getting. Um, but I think the beauty, I think the beauty of the
Do it for the
Porgs,
cat, though.
do it for the cat. Not doing it for the cat. Not telling you anything for the cat. The cat can deal with it. The
What
cat.
if I put the headphones on the cat and you
That
tell the
cat's gonna
cat?
take off. It's gonna hear my voice in like 5 seconds. It'll be like, meow, just take
Yeah,
right off. It's
probably.
gonna sound like Kylo Ren's Tie
It'll
Fighter.
be that one porg that's trying to turn the lightsaber on. And
That scene, I'm so mad. I am so mad that that lightsaber did not get turned on, and
well, it
something
wasn't.
happened.
It wasn't pressing the button. The button is on the top,
Right,
underneath
right.
the rabbit
I
ears.
I think the cool thing about the Porgs and why I think we've been kind of waiting for something in this sequel trilogy to really grab the attention of fans and be like, "Oh, this is so cute. This is marketing. This is toys. This is something that we can really put out there." Now, see, that's the mindset that I come from is that
Yes.
if you can find something that works for the fans that allows Disney, and Disney's going to probably praise me for this, allows them to make money outside of the film, Porgs were the greatest way of doing that. And I think I wouldn't be surprised if Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy didn't sit down in that moment and be like, holy shit, Porgs are going to sell like crazy. Try to
Mhm.
include one of those in everything that you do. And I think it was a very smart marketing approach, and I think that they work. I think they work in those scenes, not just for comedy, but I love the relationship between the one Porg and Chewbacca. I think that that's fantastic. Terbus the Porg, Turbis, that the Tatooine Sons podcast had come up with. Um, I think that they're fun, they're cute, and it works for kids. Star Wars is for kids, and Porgs are a great way of including that fandom of the younger fandom into it.
All right. At that point, fine. I'll accept the porgs for what they are. But
That's all I'm
I'm
asking.
I'm
That's all
still
I'm
not.
asking.
I'm still not gonna like them.
I thought I could turn you. Thought I could turn you. Much
No,
like Ray. Much like
I'm
Ben.
still not the biggest fan of Ewoks. I have come to respect them because they are very ferocious and very scary.
Yeah, they are
Especially when
extremely
you're
ferocious.
playing Battlefront 2 and you're playing the Ewok hunt. It's
Oh,
absolutely
that is
terrifying.
cool. Yeah, that is extremely terrifying to all of our fans out there who play Battlefront 2 or turned it off and are maybe going to go back and start playing it now with the DLC stuff from the Rise of
It,
Skywalker in particular.
it honestly has gotten so much better with all the updates that they've had, all the Clone
Yeah,
Wars stuff, the new looks for Kylo Ren, Rey, and Finn, Sith troopers, and everything like that.
that's cool.
Um,
That's cool.
it's definitely a lot better now. And they have two new heroes. They have BB-8 and
Oh, Dio?
no, not Dio.
Oh, Dio should be in it.
What's the First Order's BB unit?
Oh,
BB-9E.
yeah, BB-9E. Yep. Yep,
They
yep.
have him as a hero too, which is weird to have a droid as a hero. They could have put in like Zori or something like that.
Yeah, it's
But
interesting.
I
Huh.
mean, they put in stupid Captain Phasma. They could have put in Hux, and
Yeah.
Hux did more.
Hux actually did more in the very end. That's a very good point. Teaser for the
Yeah.
next review. Uh, but anyway, we've come to that time of the review, folks. Be prepared. Be prepared. We are moving
Actually,
towards
I
our.
didn't talk about my issues with
Let's go.
Finn in this.
Ah,
I teased it in the Force Awakens.
folks, get ready. Here we go.
I have to
All right.
honor
Say
what
it.
I was gonna say.
You do. You do. All right. So we're not at the end of the show. Andrew needs to speak of Finn quickly.
So the character of Finn, I love him in Force Awakens.
Yes.
Hated him in The Last Jedi.
Hmm.
Fantastic in The Rise of Skywalker. The Last Jedi, it felt like he took, like, in Force Awakens, it's like he took 3 steps forward into knowing himself and being part of the Resistance.
Right.
Last Jedi, he takes 5 steps back to being the stormtrooper trying to escape and be a
I see
deserter
that.
again.
I see that.
And there was so much growth in The Force Awakens for that character. You face off against Kylo Ren,
Yep.
knowing he was probably going to die.
Yeah, essentially.
This, if he were to face off against Kylo Ren, he'd probably turn around and run. This particular version of Finn.
Yeah.
That's just my issue with it. I've always had an issue with it, and yeah.
It's
Now you can
interesting.
wrap. Now you can wrap up if you want, unless you want to give your stuff on that.
No, I mean, I think we'll talk a lot more about it coming up next in our Rise of Skywalker review in particular. But I will say this: I do agree with you with Finn. I mean, the difference between him and the Last Jedi and the Rise of Skywalker, I really need some canon backup because he matures as a character
Mm-hmm.
even more between the
Mm-hmm.
Last Jedi and Rise. We get a very different Finn, one that looks like he's been part of the Resistance like ever since the Battle of Endor. Like he's
Mm-hmm.
been there even when the rebellion was there. He has a mode of motivation that I've never seen before in
Mm-hmm.
that character, and it's like 3 times that much more than it was in the Last Jedi. So very fascinated. Cannot wait to talk on the next one. But that is a wrap up on our Last Jedi conversation. But it's not a podcast until we do a little thing we like to call, well, what is it called, Andrew?
Plug time.
That's right. It's plug time. Andrew, where can the good people find you on the Sosh Mead?
Well, I am no longer dark on social media,
I know. Thank
so
goodness.
you can find me on Instagram at Andrew62592, Twitter at Gerrish1, and YouTube at Committed Nerd, where you can see the vlog for the day of Rise of Skywalker opening
Yes.
night, where Robin came down and Sean and everything like that, and we kind of tried to vlog the entire day, but there was just so much going on, we couldn't get the full
Mm.
day. We just did meeting up, then update, and then the review, spoiler-free review of Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah, right at the end there. And I do want to apologize to the Best Buy that we went to for my post lunch incidents. Just apologizing ahead of time. The good folks over at Best Buy. I want to say I'm sorry. Anyway, you guys can.
Go up the bathroom, huh?
I blew the Death Star. You guys can follow me over on Twitter at Mr. Vogt Tweets. Check out the Brick City Blockade over there at Brick City SWPC, www.brickcityblockade.com for everything happening in that galaxy far, far away. And of course, make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you find those podcasts that you like to listen to on whatever device. You can have a Galaxy, you can have an Android, you can have, in particular, an iPhone. I really could give a flying fuck. As long as you subscribe, have fun, stay positive, and keep loving Star Wars the way that you do it as a fandom.
The
And
way it's supposed
until,
to be.
yes, and until next time, as we always say here at the Brick City Blockade,
May the Force be with you.
always